There is a difference in this house, what we're going to talk about. There is a difference between the supernatural and the spiritual. The supernatural is just like out of the question. The supernatural is to say that there is something outside of this universe beyond what we can measure that may or may not be interacting with the material reality that we know of. The spiritual, however, can be all of these different kinds of things that maybe we can't measure yet, that maybe we can't perceive with our five senses as of yet, but the fact that we can't measure or understand them does not necessarily mean it does not exist. For example, we talk about pseudoscience that was considered pseudoscience for a long time, but then after we had the tools to measure it, we had the research funded to talk about it, eventually became more accepted in the mainstream scientific circles. Examples being the mind-body connection, examples being the gut-brain connection, and how our gut and our digestive system has just as much of a processing information that affects our decision-making as our brain, if not more in a lot of situations. There are a lot of things that I think rational atheists are so quick to identify as supernatural, but that I would argue is more under the umbrella of spiritual, that might actually be a phenomenon that is legitimately occurring and existing in the universe that we live in. We just might not be able to understand it yet. There's a lot to that, right? And there's a lot to there might even be things that we're not sure if they're technically supernatural, technically spiritual, all of this stuff. So whenever I talk about being spiritual, I'm not talking about the supernatural. I'm talking about essentially the unknown and the phenomenon of the conscious experience that we have as humans that is in fact unexplainable. Ayaan Hirsi Ali's experience here, I do consider her experience legitimate. The problem with where she goes with it is then adhering to something that is 100% nothing to do with what I would consider spirituality, with what I would consider to be the unexplainable, to be the majestic, the magnificent or whatever, because then relating it immediately to Christianity, which I don't think has anything to do, personally speaking, with the spiritual transformations internally of consciousness experiencing beings like humans who come to these more aligned, I guess you could call them awakenings, who come to these more intentional and contemplative ways of walking through this world. It's a way to combat depression and nihilism and finding purpose and meaning in every single thing we do. I mean, there's a reason that the timeless mystical wisdoms that are cross-cultural end up saying the same thing. There's that quote that's like, scientists may disagree. You get a bunch of scientists in the room and they may disagree about a bunch of different things, but all of the mystics of the world speak the same language. I think there is something to that. I think there is something powerful to that. When you get to organized religion of any kind, who starts to create these frameworks and these ways of navigating those spiritual experiences as if they were possibly able to be transposed from person to person, I think that's when you get into a level of control. I think that's when you get into a level of falsehood, because you have to start creating these myths around what is going on behind the scenes of what people, like individuals, have that they call spiritual experiences, that I think is actually problematic. When you adhere to a specific religion in relation to what you might call a spiritual experience, I don't buy it. And this is why I really do align with a lot within the spiritual, not religious community. I think there's a lot of New Age spirituality that I really do get behind and I actually see the value of. Are there grifters in New Age spirituality who are just trying to sell you, psychic frequency readings, all of this stuff? Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to deny that. Is there a lot of New Age spirituality that's in a lot of ways just repackaged Christianity? Also, very much yes, especially here in the United States. It's really hard to break free from a lot of those religious thought patterns. But I do, as much as I do technically consider myself an atheist who does not believe in a creator being and who does not believe in the supernatural, or nor do I more specifically think that it is useful to pretend like we can fucking know what's going on outside of this universe. I still consider myself a spiritual atheist, because I'm okay with the unknown. I'm okay without having all of the answers and pretending like I do have all of the answers that I can transpose over someone else's existence. And that's why I think having a really powerful spiritual experience and then adhering to an organized interpretation of that experience is problematic, because it is setting up the structure that is within the 3D material reality where humans operate and have to feed their kids and go to work and all of this stuff. Once we actually, it's like diluting the power of her experience that I really want to validate. But when she calls it Christian, I'm like, girl, babe, honey bunches of oats. That is really frustrating for me to see. Now, as she's about to get into, the flip side of that is the fact that under the umbrella term of atheism or the atheist community, which I talk about all of the time, I'm not talking about the organized religion of atheism. I'm talking about the grouping of people, of anyone who calls themselves an atheist. Okay, it's very loosely organized. That's why we struggle with building community. Like, we don't want to be a religion that evangelizes to others, right? Or like reverse converts people to atheism, all of that stuff. So when I say the atheist community, I just mean a general loose conglomerate of anyone who calls themselves an atheist. What I understand Ayaan Hirsi Ali's frustration with, or what she was missing, is that very intentional, moment-to-moment, contemplative, spiritual aspect of living a fulfilling and powerful life. I personally did not call myself an atheist for the longest time for that exact reason, because it was very important to me to still have like day-to-day spiritual practices, whether or not I believed in a creator being going on behind, pulling the strings, whether or not I believed in something outside of this universe pulling the strings. Does that make sense? So a secular message is universal. Well said. I think that's why I very much adhere to the idea of pluralism and secularism and everyone being free to worship however they want. Yes, I do adhere to that. Am I going to call out organized religion? 100%. Do I see the harm in Christianity and Islam and, any power structure of religion that is actively controlling people and trying to dictate what their spirituality should be like? Yes, 100%. But that's not to say that I'm going to hold to the mentality of not having Christians or Muslims or people who practice Judaism, whatever, at the table. Do you know what I mean? That's what it means to have a pluralist society or community. That's very important to me. I want people who believe differently than me. I want agnostics. I want theists, right? Like, I'm not threatened by someone who believes the underpinnings of the spiritual conscious experience of humanity. I'm not threatened by people who interpret it differently. I am not interested in, when someone has that experience, adhering to a structured organization or adhering to a belief system that suggests that this is exactly what's going on. Does that make sense? Like, to me, those are very important nuances that I do navigate and that I do push back on. As much as I do want everyone to feel empowered to believe whatever they want about what these spiritual practices or like mystical experiences are happening. So that's where I am with all of that.